Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. And today we're going to start a read along session for the chapter The Age of Vijaynagar and the Bahmanids and the Coming of Portuguese circa 1350 to 1565 from the book written by Satish Chandra on medieval history of India. Without any further ado, let's get started. The Vijayanagar and the Bahmani kingdoms dominated India south of the Vindhyas for more than 200 years. They not only built magnificent capitals and cities and beautified them with many splendid buildings and promoted arts and letters, but also provided for law and order and the development of commerce and handicrafts. Thus, while the forces of disintegration gradually triumphed in the North India, South India and Deccan had a long spell of stable governments. This ended with the disintegration of the Bahmani Empire towards the end of the 15th century and of the Vijayanagar Empire more than 50 years later, after its defeat in 1565 in the Battle of Bannihatti. Meanwhile, the Indian scene was transformed, first with the arrival of the Portuguese in southern India and their attempt to dominate the Indian seas, and second with the advent of the Mughals in North India. The coming of the Mughals paved the way for another spell of integration in North India. The coming of the Portuguese marked the long era of confrontation between the land-based Asian powers and the European powers which dominated the seas. The Vijayanagar Empire, its foundation and conflict with the Bahmani kingdom. The Vijayanagar kingdom was founded by Harihara and Bukka, who belonged to a family of five brothers. According to a legend, they had been feudatories of the Kakatiyas of Warangal and later became ministers in the kingdom of Kampili in modern Karnataka. When Kampili was overrun by Muhammad Tughlaq for giving refuge to a Muslim rebel, the two brothers were imprisoned, converted to Islam, and appointed to deal with the rebellions there. Harihara and Bukka, the two brothers who belonged to a family of five brothers, they were earlier the feudatories of Kakatiyas of Warangal, and they later became the ministers in the kingdom of Kampili, which is in modern Karnataka. When Kampili was overrun by Muhammad Tughlaq for giving refuge to a Muslim rebel, the two brothers were imprisoned, converted to Islam, and appointed to deal with the rebellions there. The Muslim governor of Madurai had already declared himself independent, and the Hoysala ruler of Mysore and the ruler of Warangal were also trying to assert their independence. After a short time, Harihara and Bukka forsook their new master and their new faith. At the instance of their guru, Vidyaranya, they were readmitted to Hinduism and established their capital at Vijayanagar. They were converted to Islam because of coercion by Muhammad Tughlaq for them giving refuge to a Muslim rebel, but later, on the advice of their guru Vidyaranya, they were readmitted to Hinduism and they established their capital at Vijayanagar. The brothers' name are Harihara and Bukka. Okay, moving on. Some modern scholars do not accept the tradition of their conversion to Islam, but consider them to be among the Nayakas of Karnataka who had rebelled against the Turkish rule. These modern scholars do not accept the tradition of their conversion to Islam, but consider them to be among the Nayakas of Karnataka who had rebelled against the Turkish rule. The date of Harihara's coronation is placed at 1336. At first, the young king had to contend both with the Hoysala ruler of Mysore and the Sultan of Madurai. The Sultan of Madurai was ambitious. He had defeated the Hoysala ruler and executed him in a barbarous manner. The dissolution of the Hoysala kingdom enabled Harihara and Bukka to expand their tiny principality. By 1346, the whole of the Hoysala kingdom had passed into the hands of Vijayanagar rulers. In this struggle, Harihara and Bukka were aided by their brothers and by their relations who took up the administration of the areas conquered by their efforts. The Vijayanagar kingdom was thus a kind of a cooperative commonwealth at first. Bukka succeeded his brother to the throne of Vijayanagar in 1356. and ruled till 1377. The rising power of the Vijayanagar Empire brought it into clash with many powers both in the south and to the north. In the south, its main rival were the sultans of Madurai. The struggle between the Vijayanagar and the Sultan of Madurai for about 4 days, for about 4 decades, not days, it's 4 decades. By 1377, the Sultanate of Madurai had been wiped out. The Vijayanagar Empire then comprised the whole of South India up to Rameswaram, including the Tamil country as well as that of the Cheras. To the north, however, Vijayanagar faced a powerful enemy in the shape of the Bahmani kingdom. The Bahmani kingdom had come into existence in 1347. Its founder was Alauddin Hassan, an Afghan adventurer. He had risen in the service of a Brahman named Gangu and is therefore known as Hassan Gangu. After his coronation, he assumed the title of Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah. It is said to have traced his descent from a half mythical hero of Iran, Bahman Shah. But according to a popular legend mentioned by Ferishta, the word Bahman Shah was meant to be a tribute to his Brahman patron, to his Brahman patron. In an in any case, it is from this title that the kingdom was called the Bahmani kingdom. So the Bahmani kingdom got its name from from its first ruler, Alauddin Hassan Bahman, who was kind of paying a tribute to his Brahman patron named Gangu and added the word Bahman to his name. The interest of the Vijayanagar rulers and the Bahmani sultans clashed in three separate and distinct areas in the Tungabhadra Doab, in the Krishna Godavari Delta, and in the Marathwada country. The Tungabhadra Doab was the region between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra and consisted of 30,000 square miles. On account of its wealth and economic resources, it had been the bone of contention between the western Chalukyas and the Cholas in the earlier period, and between the Yadavas and the Hoysalas later on. The struggle for the mastery of the Krishna Godavari basin, which was very fertile and which, with its numerous ports, controlled the foreign trade of the region, was often linked up with the struggle for the Tungabhadra Doab. In the Maratha country, the main contention was for the control of the Konkan and the areas which gave access to it. The Konkan was a narrow strip of land between the Western Ghats and the sea. It was extremely fertile and included within it the port of Goa, which was an important outlet for the products of the region, as well as for the import of horses from Iran and Iraq. As had been noted earlier, good quality horses was not bred in India. The import of horses from Goa was thus of great importance to the southern states. So the southern states were basically importing horses from Iran and Iraq, and the horses were not reared in India. The good quality ones are not were not bred in India, so they had to import horses so that they could have a higher military power. Military conflicts between Vijayanagar and the Bahmani kingdoms were almost a regular feature and lasted as long as these kingdoms continued. These military conflicts resulted in widespread devastation of the contested areas in the neighboring territories and a considerable loss of life and property. Both sides sacked and burnt towns and villages, imprisoned and sold into slavery men, women, and children, and committed various other barbarities. Thus, in 1367, when Bukka I assaulted the fortress of Mudgal in the disputed Tungabhadra Doab, he slaughtered the entire garrison except one man. When this news reached the Bahmani Sultan, he was enraged. On the march, vowed that he would not sheath his sword till he had slaughtered 100,000 Hindus in revenge. 100,000, it's 1 lakh Hindus in revenge for the people Bukavan assaulted in the fortress of Mudgal in 1367. That's huge. In spite of the rainy season and the opposition of the Vijayanagar forces, he crossed Tungabhadra Doab, the first time a Bahmani Sultan had in person entered the Vijayanagar territories. The Vijayanagar king was defeated in the battle and retreated into the jungle. We hear for the first time of the use of artillery by both the sides during the battle. The victory of the Bahmani Sultan was due to his superior artillery and more efficient cavalry. The war dragged on for several months, but the Bahmani Sultan could neither capture the Raja nor his capital. In the meanwhile, wholesale slaughter of men, women, and children went on. Finally, both the sides were exhausted and decided to conclude a treaty. This treaty restored the old position whereby the Doab was shared between the two. Even more important, it was agreed that since the two kingdoms would remain neighbors for a long time, it was advised to avoid cruelty in war. It was therefore stipulated that in future wars, helpless and unarmed inhabitants should not be slaughtered. Although this accord was not fully implemented, it helped to make warfare in South India more humane. So there was a battle between the Vijayanagar Empire and the Bahmani Sultan. So the Bahmani Sultan entered the Vijayanagar territories for the first time after the slaughter of his men in Mutkal by Bukkavan. So, having vowed to slaughter 100,000 Hindus, he came into the Vijayanagar kingdom and he actually defeated them in the battle, because of which the uh, king had to retreat to jungles. But there were many more struggles for the seat and the Tungabhadra Doab region. Although after subsequent battles and wars, the Bahmani ruler could not capture the Vijayanagar king as well as his capital. So there was a treaty signed between the two of them that since they have to be neighbors for a longer time period, so there should not be any cruelty of war, and this led to a more humane South Indian warfare. It was not mostly followed, but it became a general norm that not to be so much into cruelty, and in future wars, helpless and unarmed inhabitants should not be slaughtered. Having strengthened its position in South India by eliminating the Sultanate of Madurai, the Vijayanagar Empire embarked upon a policy of expansion towards the eastern sea coast under Harihara II from 1377 to 1404. There were a series of Hindu principalities in the region, the most notable being the Reddis on the upper reaches of the delta and the rulers of Warangal in the lower reaches of the Krishna Godavari delta. The rulers of Orissa to the north, as well as the Bahmani sultans, were also interested in this area. Although the ruler of Warangal has helped Hassan Gangu in his struggle against Delhi, his successor had invaded Warangal and seized the stronghold of Kolas and the hill fort of Golconda. So, even though the ruler of Warangal had helped Hassan Gangu in his struggle against Delhi, but his successor invaded Warangal and seized the stronghold of Koalas and the hill fort of Golconda. The Vijayanagar had been too busy in the south to intervene. Vijayanagar has other southern expansion prospects going on. The Bahmani Sultan fixed Golconda as the boundary of his kingdom and promised that neither he nor his successors would encroach against Warangal any further. To seal this agreement, the ruler of Warangal presented to the Bahmani Sultan a throne set with valuable jewels. It is said that it had been originally prepared as a present to Muhammad Tughlaq. The alliance of the Bahmani kingdom and Warangal lasted for over 50 years and was a major factor in the inability of Vijayanagar to overrun the Tungabhadra Doab or to stem the Bahmani offensive in the area. The battles between Vijayanagar and the Bahmanis are described in great detail by medieval writers. However, they are not of much historical importance to us. The position of the two sides remaining more or less the same, with the fortune of war swinging sometimes to one side and sometimes to the other. Harihara too was able to maintain his position in the face of Bahmani Warangal combined. His greatest success was in wresting Belgaum and Goa in the west from the Bahmani kingdom. He also sent an expedition to North Sri Lanka. After a period of confusion, Harihara II was succeeded by Devaraya I. Early in his reign, there was a renewed fight for the Tungabhadra Doab. He was defeated by the Bahmani ruler Firuz Shah, and he had to pay 10 lakhs of huns and pearls and elephants as indemnity. He also agreed to marry his daughter to he also agreed to marry his daughter to the Sultan, ceding to him in dowry Bankapur in the Doab. In order to obviate all future dispute, the marriage was celebrated with great pomp and show. When Firoz Shah Bahmani arrived near Vijayanagar for the marriage, Devaraya came out of the city and met him with a show of great splendor. From the gate of the city to the palace there was a distance of 10 kilometers. The road was spread with cloths of gold, velvet, satin, and other rich stuffs. The two monarchs rode on horseback together from the center of the city square. The relations of Devaraya joined the cavalcade, marching on foot before the two kings. The festivities lasted 3 days. So, unlike his predecessors, Devaraya, who succeeded after Harihara II, came into pact with the Bahmani ruler Firoz Shah and married off his daughter to him. And this marriage was celebrated with great and many celebrations. This was not the first political marriage of this type in South India. Earlier, the ruler of Kerala in Gondwana had married his daughter to Firoz Shah Bahmani in order to effect peace. So, Firoz Shah Bahmani has had many political marriages. It was not just marrying the daughter of Devaraya I. He was also married Kerala and Gondwana in order to effect peace. The ruler of Kerala married his daughter to Firoz Shah Bahmani. It is said that this princess was the favorite queen of Firuz. However, these marriages could not by themselves bring about peace. The question of the Krishna Godavari basin led to a renewed conflict between Vijayanagar, the Bahmani kingdom, and Orissa. So the Krishna Godavari basin was actually the bone of contention between the Vijayanagar Empire, the Bahmani kingdom, and Orissa. Following the confusion in the Reddy kingdom, Devaraya entered into an alliance with Varangal for partitioning the kingdom between them. Warangal's defection from the side of the Bahmani kingdom changed the balance of power in the Deccan. Devaraya was able to inflict a shattering defeat on Firoz Shah Bahmani and annex the entire Reddy territory up to the mouth of Krishna river. Devaraya I did not neglect the arts of peace. He constructed a dam across the Tungabhadra so that he could bring the canals into the city to relieve the shortage of water. It irrigated the neighboring fields also, for we are told that the canals increased his revenues by 350,000 per dhows. He also built a dam on the river Haridra for irrigation purposes. So he has built two major dams. One is the dam on the river Tungabhadra in order to solve the shortage of water in his kingdom, and the other is the dam on the river Haridra. After some confusion, Devraya II, who is considered the greatest ruler of the dynasty. So Devraya II is considered as the greatest ruler of the Vijayanagar kingdom, ascended the throne at Vijayanagar. In order to strengthen his army, he reorganized his army, incorporating in many features of the armies of Delhi Sultanate. According to Ferishta, Devaraya too felt that the superiority of the Bahmani army was due to their sturdier horses and their large body of mounted archers. He therefore enlisted 2,000 Muslim cavalrymen, gave them jagis, and commanded all his Hindu soldiers and officers to learn the art of archery from them. The employment of Muslims in the Vijaynagar Empire was not new, for Devaraya I is said to have kept 10,000 Muslims in his army. Farishta tells us that Devaraya II assembled 60,000 Hindus well skilled in archery, besides 80,000 cavalry and 2 lakh infantry. These figures may be exaggerated. However, the collection of a large cavalry force and standing army made the Vijayanagar Empire a more centralized polity than any of the earlier Hindu kingdoms in the south, even though it must have put a strain on the resources of the state since most of the good mounts had to be imported, and the Arabs who controlled the trade charged high prices for them. With his new army, Devaraya too crossed the Tungabhadra river in 1443 and tried to recover Mudkal, Bangapur, etc. So Bangapur was basically given to the Bahmani ruler Firuz as a dowry by Devaraya I. So Devaraya II, when he came into power, he crossed the Tungabhadra river, and since he has already re-established his army and consolidated it augmented its strength, he then tried to recover Mudkal, Bangapur, etc., which was south of the Krishna River and had been lost to the Brahmani sultans earlier. Three hard battles were fought, but in the end the two sides had to agree to the existing frontiers. Nunes, a Portuguese writer of the 16th century, tells us that the kings of Ceylon, Sri Lanka, Calicut, Pegu, and Tenasserim in Burma and Malaya paid tribute to Devaraya too. It is doubtful whether the Vijayanagar rulers were powerful enough on the sea to to extract regular tribute from the Pegu and Tenasserim. Perhaps what was meant was that the rulers of these countries were in contact with Vijayanagar and had sent presents and embassies to secure its goodwill. Sri Lanka, however, had been invaded a number of times. This could not have been attained without a strong navy. Under a series of capable rulers, Vijayanagar emerged as the most powerful and wealthy state in the south during the first half of the 15th century. The Italian traveller Niccolo Conti, who had visited Vijayanagar in 1420, had left us a graphic account of it. He says the circumference of the city is 60 miles. Its walls carried up to the mountains and enclosed the valleys at their fort. In this city, there are estimated to be 90,000 men fit to bear arms. The king is more powerful than all other kings in India. Farishta also says the princes of the house of Bahmani maintained their superiority by valor only, for in power, wealth, and extent of the country, the Rayas of Vijayanagar, greatly exceeded them. The Persian traveller Abdul Razak, who had travelled widely in and outside India, visited Vijayanagar in the reign of Devaraya II. He gives a glowing account of the country, saying, this latter prince had in his dominions 300 forts, each of which is equal to Calicut and terra firma. His territories comprise a space of 3 months' journey. All travelers agree that the country was thickly populated and numerous towns and villages. Abdul Razak says the country is for the most part well cultivated, well fertile. The troops amount in number to 11 lakhs. Abdul Razak considers Vijayanagar to be one of the most splendid cities anywhere in the world which he had seen or heard of. Describing the city, he says, it is built in such a manner that seven citadels and the same number of walls enclose each other. The seventh fortress, which is placed at the center of the others, occupies an area 10 times larger than the marketplace of the city of Herat. Starting from the palace, there are four bazaars which are extremely long and broad. As was the Indian custom, people belonging to one caste or profession lived in one quarter of the town. Muslims appear to have lived in separate quarters provided for them. in bazaars as well as in the king's place, as well as in the king's palace. One sees numerous running streams and canals formed of chiseled stone, polished and smooth. Another later traveler says that the city was larger than Rome, one of the biggest towns in the Western world at that time. The kings of Vijaynagar were reputed to be very wealthy. Abdul Razak mentions the tradition that in the king's palace are several cell-like basins filled with bullion forming one mass. The hoarding of wealth by a ruler was an ancient tradition. However, such hoarded wealth remained out of circulation and sometimes invited foreign attack. The Kingdom, its expansion and disintegration. The history of the rise of the Bahmani kingdom and its conflict with the Vijayanagar Empire till the death of Dev Raya II in 1446 has already been traced. The most remarkable figure in the Bahman kingdom during the period was Firuz Shah Bahmani. Firuz Shah Bahmani was the one to whom Dev Raya I married off his daughter to in exchange of Bankapur as dowry. He was well acquainted with the religious sciences, that is, commentaries on Quran, jurisprudence, etc., and was particularly fond of the natural sciences such as botany, geometry, logic, etc. He was a good calligraphist and a poet and often composed extempore verses. According to Ferishta, he was well versed not only in Persian, Arabic, and Turkish but also in Telugu, Kannada, and Marathi. He had a large number of wives in his harem from various countries and regions, including many Hindu wives, and we are told that he used to converse with each of them in their own language. Firuz Shah Bahmani was determined to make the Deccan the cultural center of India. A decline of the Delhi Sultanate helped him, for many learned people migrated from Delhi to the Deccan. Because of the decline of the Delhi Sultanate, many of the learned people who earlier used to be in Delhi migrated to Deccan. The king also encouraged learned men from Iran and Iraq. He used to say that the king should draw around them the learned and meritorious persons of all nations so that their society they might obtain information and thus acquire some of the advantages acquired by traveling to different regions of the globe. He generally spent his time till midnight in the company of divines, poets, reciters of history, and the most learned and witty among his courtiers. He had read the Old and New Testaments and respected the tenets of all religions. Farishta calls him an Orthodox Muslim, his only weakness being his fondness of drinking wine and listening to music. The most remarkable step taken by Firuz Shah Bahmani was the induction of Hindus in the administration on a large scale. It is said that from his time the Deccani Brahmins became dominant in the administration, particularly in the revenue administration. The Deccani Hindus also provided a balance against the influx of foreigners. Firuz Shah Bahmani encouraged the pursuit of astronomy and built an observatory near Daulatabad. He paid much attention to the principal ports of his kingdom, Chaul and Dabhol, which attracted trading ships from the Persian Gulf and Red Sea and brought in luxury goods from all parts of the world. Firuz Bahmani started the Bahmani kingdom. Sorry, Firuz Bahmani started the Bahmani expansion towards Berar by defeating the Gond Raja Narsingh Rai of Kerala. So the kingdom was actually started by Hassan Gangu or Ahmad Hassan Bahmani. The Rai made a present of 40 elephants, 5 moles of gold, and 50 moles of silver. So when Firuz Shah actually started his expansion towards Berar and he defeated the Gond Raja Narsingh Rai of Kerala, who made him a present of very magnificent and luxury items. A daughter of Rai was also married to Firuz. Kerala was restored to Narsingh, who was made an Amir of the kingdom and given robes of state, including an embroidered cap. Firuz Shah Bahmani's marriage with a daughter of Devraya I and the subsequent battles against Vijayanagar have been mentioned already. The struggle for the domination of the Bahmani kingdom received a setback when Firuz Shah was defeated by Dev I. This defeat weakened the position of Firuz. He was compelled to abdicate in favor of his brother Ahmad Shah I, who is called a saint Wali on account of his association with the famous Sufi saint Gesu. Ahmad Shah continued the struggle for the domination of the eastern seaboard in South India. He could not forget that in the last two battles in which the Bahmani Sultan had been defeated, the ruler of Warangal had sided with Vijaynagar. In order to wreak the vengeance, he invaded Warangal, defeated and killed the ruler in a battle, and annexed most of his territories. In order to consolidate his rule over the new acquired territories, he shifted the capital from Gulbarg to Bidar. After this, he turned his attention towards Malwa, Gondwana, and the Konkan. Mahmud governed. The loss of Warangal to the Bahmani kingdom changed the balance of power in South India. The Bahmani kingdom gradually expanded and reached its height of power and territorial limits during the prime ministership of Mahmud Gawan. So, the Mahmud Gawan was the prime minister of the Bahmani kingdom. The early life of Mahmud Gawan is obscure. He was an Iranian by birth and was a trader and was first a trader. He was introduced to the Sultan and soon became a favorite and was granted the title of Malik ut Tujjar. Soon he became a prime minister or Peshwa. For almost 20 years, Mahmud Gaban dominated the affairs of the state. He extended the Bahman kingdom by making further annexations in the east. A deep raid in the Vijaynagar territories up to Kanchi demonstrated the strength of the Bahmani army. Mahmud Gaban's major military contributions, however, was the overrunning of the western coastal areas, including Dabhol and Goa. The loss of these ports was a heavy blow to Vijayanagar. Control of Goa and Dabhol led to further expansion of the Bahmani overseas trade in Iran, Iraq, etc. Internal trade and manufacture also grew. Mahmud Gaban also tried to settle the northern frontiers of the kingdom since the time of Ahmad Shah I. The kingdom of Malwa, ruled by Khalji rulers, had been contending for the mastery of the Gondwana, Berar, and Konkan. In this struggle, the Brahmani sultans had sought and secured the help of the rulers of Gujarat. After a good deal of conflict, it had been agreed that Kerala in Gondwana would go to Malwa and Berar to the Bahmani sultan. However, the rulers of Malwa were always on the lookout for seizing Berar. Mahmud Gawan had to wage a series of bitter battles against Mahmud Khalji of Malwa over Berar. He was able to prevail due to the active help given to him by the ruler of Gujarat. It would thus be seen that the pattern of struggle in the south did not allow divisions along religious lines, political and strategic considerations, and control over trade and commerce being more important causes of the conflict. So in the south, we could see that there are no divisions or patterns of struggle due to different religions. However, these struggles were because of the political and strategic considerations and the autonomy or control these kingdoms wanted over the trade ports. Secondly, the struggle between the various states in North India and in South India did not proceed completely in isolation from each other. In the west, Malabar and Gujarat were drawn into the affairs of Deccan. In the east, Odisha was involved in the struggle with Bengal and also cast envious eyes on the commercially rich Coromandel coast. The Odisha rulers made deep raids into South India after 1450, their armies reaching as far south as Madurai, and the territories of Odisha extended up to the river Krishna. Their activities further weakened the Vijayanagar Empire, which was passing through a phase of internal discord following the death of Dev II. Mahmud Gaban carried out many internal reforms also. He divided the kingdom into 8 provinces or tarafs. Each taraf was governed by a tarafdar. The salaries and obligations of each noble were fixed. For maintaining a contingent of 500 horses, a noble received a salary of 1 lakh huns per year. The salary could be paid in cash or by signing a jagir. Those who were paid by means of jagir were allowed expenses for the collection of land revenue. In every province, a tract of land, Khalisa, was set apart for the expenses of the Sultan. Efforts were made to measure the land and to fix the amount to be paid by the cultivator to the state. Mahmud Khan was a great patron of arts. He built a magnificent madrasa, a college in the capital Bidar. This fine building, which was decorated with colored tiles, was three-storied. It was 3 stories high and had accommodation for 1,000 teachers and students who were given clothes and food free. Some of the most famous scholars of the time belonging to Iran and Iraq came to the madrasa at the institute. One of the most difficult problems which faced the Bahmani kingdom was strife among the nobles. The nobles were divided into the long established Deccanies and the newcomers who were foreigners, Afakis, also called Gharibs. As a newcomer, Mahmud Gawan was hard put to win the confidence of the Deccanese. Though he adopted a broad policy of conciliation, the party's strife could not be adopted. His opponents managed to poison the ears of the young sultan who had him executed in 1482. Mahmud Gawan was over 70 years old at that time. The party strife now became even more intense. The various governors became independent. Soon the Bahmani kingdom was divided into the five principalities: Golconda, Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Birar, and Bedar. So the five principalities of Bahmani kingdom emerged because of the strife among the nobles. So the strife was so intense that Gaban, though he was Mahmud Gaban, though he was a very efficient and a good militaryman and administrator, he was executed by the young prince when he was 70 years old because of the poisoning of the ears of the ruler, and there were talks behind Mahmud Gaban's back. So, because of this, there was the disintegration of the Bahmani kingdom, and five major principalities emerged. The first one is Golconda, second is Bijapur, third is Ahmednagar, fourth is Berar, and the last one, fifth is Bidar. So, in that order, it's Golconda, Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Berar, and Bidar. One of these kingdoms, one of these, the kingdoms of Ahmednagar, Bijapur, and Golconda, played a leading role in the Deccan politics till their absorption in the Mughal Empire during the 17th century. Bahmani kingdom acted as a cultural bridge between the north and the south. This line is really important. So the Bahmani kingdom acted as a cultural bridge between the north and the south. The culture which developed as a result had its own specific features which were distinct from the North India. These cultural traditions were continued by the successor states and also influenced the development of the Mughal culture during the period. The climax of the Vijayanagar Empire and its disintegration. As mentioned earlier, there was a confusion in the Vijayanagar Empire after the death of Devaraya II. Since the rule of primogeniture was not established in Vijayanagar, there was a series of civil war among the various contenders to the throne. Many feudatories assumed independence in the process. The ministers became very powerful and began to exact presents and heavy taxes from the people, causing considerable distress to them. The authority of the Raya shrunk to Karnataka and to some portions of the western Andhra region. The rulers were sunk in pleasures and neglected the affairs of the state. After some time, the throne was usurped by the king's minister Saluva. The earlier dynasty thus came to an end. Saluva restored internal law and order and founded a new dynasty. This dynasty too soon came to an end. Ultimately, a new dynasty called Tuluva dynasty was founded by Krishnadev. Krishnadevaraya was the greatest figure of this dynasty. Some historians consider him to be the greatest of all the Vijayanagar rulers. Krishnadev had not only re-established internal law and order, he had also to deal with the old rivals of Vijayanagar, which the successor states of Burman kingdoms. and the state of Orissa, which had usurped many Vijayanagar territories. In addition, he had to contend with the Portuguese, whose power was slowly growing. They were they were using their control over the seas to browbeat the smaller vassal states of Vijayanagar in the coastal areas in order to gain economic and political concessions. They had even offered to buy the neutrality of the Raya by promising him assistance in recovering Goa from Bijapur and giving him a monopoly in the supply of horses. In a series of battles lasting 7 years, Krishnadev first compelled the rulers of Odisha to restore Vijayanagar, all the territories up to the river Krishna. Having thus strengthened himself, Krishnadeva renewed the old struggle for the control of the Tungabhadra Doab. This led to a hostile alliance between his two main opponents, Bijapur and Orissa. Krishnadev made grand preparations for the conflict. He opened the hostilities by overrunning Raichur and Mutkal. In the battle which followed, Bijapur ruler was completely defeated. He was pushed across the river Krishna, barely escaping with his life. In the west, the Vijayanagar armies reached Belgaum, occupied and sacked Bijapur for a number of days and destroyed Gulbarg before a truce was made. Thus, under Krishnadeva, Vijayanagar emerged as the strongest military power in the south. However, in their eagerness to renew the old feuds, southern powers largely ignored the danger posed to them and to their commerce by the rise of Portuguese. Unlike the Cholas and some of the early Vijayanagar rulers, Krishnadeva seemed to have paid scant attention to the development of a navy. The conditions in Vijayanagar during this period were described by a number of foreign travelers. Pace, an Italian who spent a number of years at Krishnadeva's court, has given a glowing account of his personality, but he remarks he is a great ruler and a man of much justice, but subject to sudden fits of rage. He cherished his subjects, and his solicitude for their welfare became proverbial. He also tried to create a more centralized administration by ousting all the Nayaks from the Tungabhadra Doab and bringing it under direct administration. Krishnadeva was also a great builder. He built a new town near Vijayanagar and dug an enormous tank, which was also used for irrigation purposes. He was a gifted scholar of Telugu and Sanskrit. Of his many works, only one of Telugu on polity and a drama in Sanskrit are available today. His reign marked a new era in Telugu literature when imitation of Sanskrit works gave place to independent works. He extended his patronage to Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil poets alike. Foreign travelers like Barbosa, Pace, and Nunes speak of his efficient administration and the prosperity of the empire under his sway. Vijayanagar rulers are considered great protectors of Hinduism. Under their patronage, a large number of temples, schools, and mats were built. In this period, temples became a very elaborate in structure and organization. Even old temples were amplified by the addition of pillared halls, pavilions, and other subordinate structures. However, speaking of the broad toleration that prevailed in the empire of Krishnadeva, Barbosa says the king allows such freedom that every man may come and go and live according to his own creed, without suffering any annoyance and without inquiring whether he is a Christian, Jew, Moor, or Heathen. Barbosa also pays tribute to Krishnadeva for the justice and equity prevailing in his empire. After the death of Krishnadeva in 1530, there was a struggle for succession among his relations since his sons were all minors. Ultimately, in 1543, Sadashivraya ascended the throne and reigned till 1567, but the real power lay in the hands of triumvirate in which the leading person was Ramaraj. Ramaraja was able to play off the various Muslim powers against one another. He entered into a commercial treaty with the Portuguese, whereby the supply of horses to Bijapur rulers was stopped. In a series of wars, he completely defeated the Bijapur ruler and also inflicted humiliating defeats on Golconda and Ahmednagar. It seems that Ramaraja had no larger purpose than to maintain the balance of power favorable to Vijayanagar between these three powers. At length, they combined to inflict a crushing defeat on Vijayanagar at Bannihatti near Tallikota in 1565. So all of them coalesced and gave a crushing defeat to Vijayanagar at Bannihatti near Tallikota. This is called the Battle of Tallikota or the Battle of Rakshasa Tangadi. Ramaraja was surrounded, taken prisoner, and immediately executed. It is said that 1 lakh Hindus were slain during the battle. Vijayanagar was thoroughly looted and left in ruins. The Battle of Banihatti is generally considered to mark the end of the great age of Vijayanagar. Although the kingdom lingered on for almost 100 more years, its territory decreased continually, and the Raya no longer counted in the political affairs of South India. So this was the end of the Rayas as well as the Vijayanagar. We'll start from state and economy under Vijayanagar in the next video. So till then, see ya. Bye.